Hi everyone, welcome back to the Book Review Corner. In today's video, we're going to look at Speck, The Life and Times of Spencer Penrose by Robert C. Olsen. In a moment, we'll get into who Spencer Penrose was, but before we do, I just want to say that I enjoyed this book and that it was pretty easy to read. It's only about 200 pages long. With that said, there are a few key takeaways from the book that I'd like to share with you today. My first takeaway from the book is what you do with what you have matters. Spencer Penrose had 5 brothers, was born in a well-to-do family in Philadelphia. He was educated in a private Episcopal school and later went to college in Harvard. He later went into business with his friend Charles Tutt and made millions in mining and real estate. What I find truly interesting about Spencer Penrose, though, is what he did with the millions that he made in mining. To list just a few things that he did for Colorado, he built the highway up Pikes Peak and created the international hill climb up Pikes Peak. He later donated that same highway to the U.S. government. He sponsored airplane races from Denver to Pikes Peak. He created the Pikes Peak or Bust Rodeo, as well as its first stadium on the Broadmoor grounds. He created the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo and later transferred ownership to the city of Colorado Springs. He built the Will Rogers Shrine in the Sun, where both he and his wife Julie now rest. And this is a humorous side note. He originally was going to name it after himself until his brother convinced that would be not the best. So he later decided to name it after his friend Will Rogers, the humorist, who died in a plane crash in Alaska. He built a huge and very profitable copper mine, open-face copper mine, in Utah. He and his wife Julie donated to the Glockner Sanatorium, which used to be a 25-bed sanatorium here in Colorado Springs. By the end of their donation, it was a over 300-bed hospital with state-of-the-art equipment and facilities, now known as Penrose, Maine. He funded the creation of 2 world-class golf courses on the Broadmoor, which have hosted one of the events of the LPGA, among others hosting many professional golfers that are well-known and well-regarded nationally. He also built the original Broadmoor World Arena, which hosted international skating competitions. That's a big list to say that both Spencer and Julie Penrose poured tons of money into Colorado, and especially Colorado Springs, to make it the city that it is today. Now I'll pause here and say that other people across history have made huge impacts without a bunch of money. Take Mother Teresa, for example, who made a huge impact in Calcutta with not very much at all. What matters is not how much or how little you have, but what you wind up doing with it in the end. My second takeaway from the book is who you surround yourself with matters. From a very young age, Spencer Penrose's mother was very concerned about who Spencer Penrose and the rest of his brothers spent their time with. She was very particular about making sure that the Penroses hung around people of a similar class in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Penroses all attended a private Episcopal school and later attended Harvard University. They were all highly educated and they were all surrounded by people who had different life experiences. One of his friends, in fact one of his closest childhood friends, Charles Tutt, wound up being his business partner out here in Colorado Springs. The business that Charles Tutt created, which was a mining, real estate, and trust business, and later invited Spencer Penrose to take part of the Cripple Creek branch of that business, is what enabled them to make millions and eventually invest in the copper mines and generate even more millions. Beyond monetary things, though, I think it also benefited him to surround himself with like-minded individuals. At Cripple Creek, he was known as hanging around the other quote-unquote socialites, which were other former Ivy League graduates who were now hanging out in this gold mining town in the middle of the boom. On the one hand, it could have just been coincidence that they all wound up hanging out together. On the other hand, I imagine that they had similar things to talk about, such as their growing and upbringing. Just the way that they chose to live life, I imagine, would have been similar. But I think it's important to add that Spencer Penrose didn't associate with people simply because of their upbringing or because of their education. There were many people in Wall Street who he was not particularly fond of because he had friends who had lost a lot of money thanks to Wall Street people. So naturally he steered clear of a lot of Wall Street money and surrounded himself with a lot of people that would have related to him in making a lot of their money in mining. The last point that I'll add on this subject is that Spencer's dad and his oldest brother weren't particularly fond of his business idea at first. His eldest brother and his dad were wary that it wasn't going to pan out the way that he was hoping for. But as things started to succeed in the mining business, as Spencer's business started to take off and they started to make millions, they grew more and more comfortable with this idea. I don't think Spencer Penrose would have changed the landscape of Colorado Springs had he remained in Pennsylvania. He would have been a great banker and lived a great life. But he surrounded himself with people that supported him on his journey. And eventually, his family, who really wanted him to succeed, saw that he was able to bring success in a new environment. My last takeaway from the book is that education matters. This point has some connections to the last point, so I may bounce back and forth as I'm going through. But I'll start off by just addressing, we talked about Charles Tutt and Spencer Penrose's business partnership and how it was because they were friends from a very early age at the Episcopal school that happened at all. Putting that example aside, what I really found as an example of why education matters has to do with the Bingham Canyon mine in Utah. While Spencer Penrose and Charles Tutt were making millions running mines in Cripple Creek, Colorado, there was a storm brewing that neither of them could have predicted, and no one else could have predicted either. A lot of mine owners at the time who had made millions through mining would eventually go bankrupt. But Spencer Penrose and Charles Tutt managed to make it out with millions and millions more. How did they do that? I think in part there is a bit of luck. And to another extent, I think that education does play a factor here. I can't remember specifically how this happened, but somehow they were presented with the opportunity to purchase an open-face mine in Utah, what would later be known as the Bingham Canyon mine, which later became one of the greatest copper mines in the United States, produced very low-grade copper. At first blush, this mine did not appear to be a profitable one, but Spencer approached his brother Dick, who was a geologist, and asked him to evaluate and see if there was any way that they could turn this into a profitable business. Thanks in a very big way to Dick's education, they were able to turn a very low-grade copper into high-grade copper and create a business opportunity for all of them. That copper mine's money later provided money for the El Pomar Foundation's founding. And the El Pomar Foundation still exists to this day with millions and millions of dollars going out to various organizations around the state to help people. Without Dick's education, that copper mine may have never turned into the profitable machine that it is. And we may not have seen the Colorado Springs that we see today, or even the Colorado that we see today. And on that note, I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I really enjoyed learning more about Spencer Penrose and more about Colorado Springs and how it came to be what it is today. If you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next video. Totally.